One of the most unique parts of the National Hockey League is, of course, the Stanley Cup. Many argue that it's the greatest trophy in all of sports. Of course, a piece of hardware as storied as Lord Stanley's Cup has a rich history. Here are some of the best facts and stories about the Stanley Cup. After Lord Stanley of Preston was appointed by Queen Victoria as Governor General of Canada on June 11, 1888, he and his family became highly enthusiastic about ice hockey. Lord Stanley's sons, Arthur and Algernon, persuaded their father to donate a trophy to be an outward and visible sign of the hockey championship. In 1892, Lord Stanley purchased a decorative punch bowl. The bowl was made in Sheffield, England, and sold by a London silversmith for 10 guineas. Equal to 10.5 pounds sterling, which is equal to $1,468 in 2021 dollars. The Dominion Hockey Challenge Cup, also known as Stanley's Original Cup from 1892, was presented in 1970 and is now on display in the Vault Room at the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. The Presentation Cup, which is still used today, was created in 1963 because NHL President Clarence Campbell thought the original cup had grown too fragile to award to champion teams. Its authenticity can be verified by observing the Hockey Hall of Fame seal on the underside. The last cup is a copy of the Presentation Cup, a substitute used at the Hall of Fame when the original is unavailable. Made in 1993 by Montreal silversmith Louis Saint-Jacques. Unlike other Major League Sports awards, it is not customary to produce a new Stanley Cup every year. Instead, the names of the winning team's players, coaches, management, and staff are added to the cup following each championship. The 1906-07 Montreal Wanderers were the first team to have its roster engraved. Their names were engraved inside the Dominion Hockey Challenge Cup's inner bowl. The 1914-15 Vancouver Millionaires are the only other team names that are inscribed on the inner bowl. The decision was made to place a separate single ring below the original cup so that each new winning roster could be inscribed on it because more teams wanted to be forever enshrined in history. A newer, more streamlined and vertical version of the cup was in use between 1927 and 1947. Its cylindrical shape earned it the moniker Stovepipe Cup. But by 1948, the trophy had grown too tall to be held or displayed, so it was redesigned into the tiered version that is still in use today. 5 bands of championship names have been inscribed around the base of the cup since 1958. The oldest band is taken off when the rings are full and stored in Lord Stanley's vault in the Great Esso Hall of the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's then replaced with a band that is empty and waiting to be filled with the names of future champions. There are currently no championship team names on the cup from the 1928-1929 to the 1964-1965 seasons. The oldest winning team on the cup today are the 1965-66 Montreal Canadiens. There have only ever been 4 authorized NHL engravers in the 96 years of the league. The first was Danish engraver Carl Poul Petersen, who created the 1948 Stanley Cup. He immigrated to Montreal in 1929 and ran his engraving business with his sons Arnaud, Ole, and John Paul until his death in 1977. The current engraver is Louis Saint-Jacques, who took over from Doug Boffey and his father Eric at their Montreal shop, Boffey Silversmiths, in 1989. Doug Boffey and his father Eric were the second and third official engravers. Saint-Jacques disassembles the cup from the top down and clamps the band being engraved in a homemade circular jig in order to engrave each name individually. He strikes each letter into the silver using specialized small hammers and a series of letter stamps, using a metal level to keep the names as straight as possible. Each name takes about a half hour to engrave, according to Saint-Jacques. And it takes a non-continuous, not to mention patient, 10 hours to complete each name for the winning team. To have one's name engraved on the Stanley Cup, certain requirements must be met. A player must have at least 41 games played with the club or 1 game played in the Stanley Cup Finals. However, in 1994, a stipulation was added to allow a team to petition the commissioner for permission to have players' names put on the cup if extenuating circumstances prevented them from being available to play. Even though he didn't play that year, the Detroit Red Wings requested that Vladimir Konstantinov's name be engraved on the Stanley Cup when they won it in 1998. Because Konstantinov was a team member who suffered serious injuries in a car accident before the Wings successfully defended their title, the NHL permitted it. There are a few instances where there are no names at all, such as in 1919 when the cup was not given out due to the influenza pandemic. Due to the league and players' unions' lockout, it was also not given out for the 2004-05 season. The word "season not played" appears throughout the player name space. When the 1962 Stanley Cup was on display at Chicago Stadium for the defending champion Blackhawks, Montreal fans were so adamant about keeping it that Habs fan Ken Galander tried to take it and leave with it. "I want to take it back where it belongs, to Montreal," Galander said in response to a police officer who apprehended and questioned him. On the cup are the names of 17 women. The first was Margaret Norris, who was presided over the Detroit Red Wings' triumph in 1954-1955. The only Canadian woman to have her name inscribed is Calgary Flames co-owner Sonia Skurfield, who watched her team hoist the cup in 1989. The keeper of the cup, a minimum of one member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, is always present with the Stanley Cup. Philip Pritchard, the current keeper, has been in the position since 1991 and even keeps a Twitter account to inform followers of the Cup's whereabouts on a daily basis. Lord Stanley stipulated that 2 trustees must always be appointed to look after the Cup, make sure it's kept in proper condition. According to the Hockey Hall of Fame, the 2 current trustees, Brian O'Neill and Ian "Scotty" Morrison, have absolute power over all matters regarding the Stanley Cup. A day with the Cup is one of the best traditions in sports. The NHL gives each champion team 100 off-season days to do as they please with the Cup. The custom of allowing each player one private day with the Cup during the offseason was established by the New Jersey Devils in 1994 to 1995. In fact, the Hall of Fame has been documenting the journeys of the Cup with each winning team since the 2003 campaign. While some players use their time with the trophy for quiet reflection, other players have gone a little crazy. Speaking of crazy, the Silver Seven had a little too much fun celebrating the 1905 Stanley Cup victory of the Ottawa Hockey Club, now known as the Ottawa Senators. After the team banquet, some drunk players allegedly took the trophy outside and tried to kick the then small cup into Ottawa's Rideau Canal to see how accurate they were. When they were successful, they continued on their drunken journey and promptly forgot about it until their teammates noticed the trophy was missing the following day. Later, the team's most responsible player, Harry Smith, received the Stanley Cup and was given custody of it. The 1924 Stanley Cup champion Canadiens players had to remove the cup from the trunk in order to access the spare tire while traveling to the team's banquet at owner Leo Dandurand's home. The players quickly changed their tires and headed to the party in order to celebrate their victory. The cup was missing when it was time for each player to sip champagne from the silver bowl as per tradition. It was left by the side of the road by the players. The cup was in a snowbank where they had left it when they jumped in their car and drove quickly back to the location where they had changed flats. However, that wasn't the first time a hockey team from Montreal had misplaced the trophy. The 1907 Montreal Wanderers left it at the residence of a team photographer whose mother used the cup as a flower pot until the team returned to pick it up. Defenseman Sylvain Lefebvre used his time with the trophy after the Colorado Avalanche won the 1995-96 championship to christen his daughter in the center of the bowl. In order for his cousin to baptize his 7-week-old daughter in the trophy, Swedish left winger Tomas Holmstrom brought the trophy back to his home country 11 years after the Detroit Red Wings won in 2007-08. John Archibald, a forward for the Pittsburgh Penguins, did the same with his young son in 2017. A record 54-year championship drought for the New York Rangers, the team hadn't won since the 1939-40 season, was broken in 1994 when Mark Messier and the Blue Shirts won. Fans think that the Rangers' disrespect of the Cup may have been the cause of the curse. The mortgage of the Rangers' home rink, which at the time was the third incarnation of Madison Square Garden, was finally paid off during the 1939-1940 campaign. Stanley Cup's bowl was ceremoniously burned by the team's management as a way to celebrate. Then to celebrate their victory, left winger Lynn Patrick and his teammates allegedly peed in the Cup's bowl. In 1994, the Rangers finally won the Stanley Cup once more, but they haven't done so since. The Stanley Cup has been in countries all over the world, including Sweden, the Czech Republic, and Russia. But did you know the Stanley Cup has even been to war? The Cup was flown into an active war zone at Camp Nathan Smith in Kandahar, Afghanistan, for a meet and greet in an effort to raise morale for Canadian and American troops serving in the Middle East. As you can imagine, a trophy as old as the Stanley Cup has been through a lot, especially considering it's often the centerpiece to the party. Therefore, it's no stranger to dinks, dents, and a host of other accidents. The Cup has survived a rough night of clubbing in New York, an alleged misfire when being launched from a balcony into a pool, and most recently was dented during the Colorado Avalanche's on-ice celebrations. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to see more videos on hockey and the NHL, click the subscribe button to become a part of our vagabond crew.